Hey everyone, my name is Leanna and I'm from Love Learning STEM, and I'm here to bring you some classroom management tips for STEM classroom teachers or even STEM roving teachers. I did this for about 5 years and it was just about the hardest thing being in the classroom as a STEM teacher, going from class to class in a district. So if you are one of those CART teachers or roving STEM teachers, you do not have your own classroom, and this video is more specifically geared towards you, although any STEM teacher can use the tips in this video. So I just remember in this time that I was seeing about 200 students a week, and I would have 200 names to remember, 200 personalities, 13, 14 classrooms to be able to manage with different homeroom teachers and different expectations from each classroom. And so I just remember going into each different classroom and it being a completely different space and not having a true sense of my own classroom management in these spaces. So with time I was able to work this system out and be able to implement some of these strategies that I'm sharing with you today, and it just about turned everything around. It was such an amazing transformation, and it felt like my own classroom everywhere I went, and they knew me and my expectations, and it was amazing. So let's get started right away. Okay, so one of my first strategies that I highly recommend is getting to know your students' names. Now, I know if you have a lot of students, it is going to be difficult, but it is something that I gave myself a goal for the first quarter or the first 2 months. I would be focusing on student names. So that would mean that I would print out the rosters for each classroom, and we had sometimes we had pictures that went with the students' names. Now, I don't recommend putting the pictures to your students' names if you have to do it from scratch. But if your computer system already has a printing option where you can print the student's name with the picture side by side, I highly recommend that, because you're able to reference who the child is to their picture, and it just makes it so much easier. Now, if you don't have that option, you are able to do a few different things. One of the first things I did actually the very first day I would go into any classroom, I would be able to fold up different pieces of paper, and I would show the students how to fill it out so that it would be kind of like a name tag on their desk. And this is not something that they would keep during the entire school day, because I'm not there all day, and their homeroom teacher might not want this name tag on there all day. And so what I would do is I would collect these name tags back, and every time I would go into this classroom, I would have a child pass this paper out. And so every time I would see their name tag, and I would have them write 4 things about themselves, like hobbies, anything about themselves, to kind of personalize this name tag. And it was one of those folding tent name tags. If you don't want to go this extra step, maybe you can ask the homeroom teacher to actually have name tags if they don't have them. Generally, most teachers do have name tags that go at the top of the tables. So you can ask the teacher or the students that before you go into their classroom every day, every time, to clear off their table so you can see their name tags very clearly. So this would kind of help. Another thing I would do with this is every time I went into the classroom, I would do roll. Now, I don't need to take attendance for my own personal classroom for my own needs, but this was a great way for me to be able to see. So as I'm taking roll, I'm calling out names quickly, and I'm able to see which name goes with which student. And this may take 5 minutes or 3 minutes, and I know that's a lot of time, especially when you've only got 40 minutes in your STEM class, or an hour, or even sometimes 30 minutes if you're working with younger kids. And so this takes a long time, but I feel like it's worth its time in gold, because you get to know these kids, and it's so much easier when the student knows you know their name, because in a sense, when you know a child all year long, you see them their face and you work with them, but you don't know their name. They can tell that you didn't care enough. And I know it's not a caring enough situation, because I've gone so many months without knowing a child's name simply because I have so many students, but put in the time to get to know your students' names, all of them, and you will reap the rewards from it all year long. So another tip I have is to actually, as a STEM teacher, do some socio-emotional learning activities in your class. What I mean by this is it could be breathing techniques. Like we all know, STEM class is extremely difficult. It's not as easy or fun as they describe it to be. You're not building with the rainbows around you. There's constant chaos. There is constant difficulty because you're having the students do something really just different. You're having them problem solve and having them to manage these issues that they need to work through using different, whether it's math, ELA, science. You're having them integrate all these different subjects, and it can get really frustrating. So one of the things I do is have our students do breathing techniques, either before they do builds, or let's say I sense a class being frustrated with a build, we'll pause and we'll do box breathing. If these are just different breathing techniques, and what I recommend is go check out some YouTube videos. There's so many good ones out there, 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute clips where you can literally show the class the clip, do it together, and keep doing these types of breathing techniques in your class to be able to ground your students, and to, especially the ones that are anxious when it comes to talking in groups, because they are working in groups often, or when they're building and the kids that don't want to speak out. There's just so much anxiety that can be involved in STEM class. And so these type of techniques actually really ground your students and get them a little more in tune with their own breathing and their bodies and what they're feeling, and be able to manage their emotions in this way. Another thing I do almost every time I go into a classroom is a type of check-in. It could be as simple as you're asking your students how they're feeling each day, and it can go from 1 to 10. So 10 being you're having the best day of your life, you just won the lottery, or you're going to Disneyland today, or it's your birthday, whatever it is, to 1 where you're having an incredibly difficult day. Like there's been loss, there's a lot of grieving, there's a lot of trauma, and then there's somewhere in between in the middle where there's a 5. You're just having a so-so day. And so you can go over these feelings with them in the beginning of the school year and remind them. And this is another way for them to be in tune with where they are at. And it helps not only you, yourself, the teacher, to be able to meet them where they're at, but also helps their peers know where they're at. So when they get in a group together, that they know how to manage themselves in a way where they're being respectful, extra respectful. I know they should be respectful all the time, but extra respectful, extra compassionate to the students that need a little bit more love that day. And this is something you teach in your class. And it goes a long way, especially when you have your kids working in groups where they don't want to work together, where they're in groups with people they don't want to be with, or they've never spoken to. And so this is a layer in a STEM class where you wouldn't expect to be teaching, but it really goes a long distance and eliminates a lot of the issues that can come up with STEM class. And so I can do this in a few different ways depending on how much time I have. If I have, let's say, 5-6 minutes to spare, I have all the kids stand up. This is a procedure I teach them, and they get in a circle real quick. I say 10, 9, 8, countdown, and then they should be standing in a circle. And there's a talking stick, and it's just something I find in a classroom. And they basically pass it down, and they share their number. And they can share their number and why, or they just share their number. And there is no mandatory, they don't have to share why, and they know this, but I jot down the students that are either really low, have low check-in numbers, to be able to just check in with them and see how they're doing. In passing, in transitions, it's not something I go to them and address it right away. If I don't have time at all, I'll write a note to the homeroom teacher saying, hey, I noticed this child checked in at this number, wasn't able to check in with them, but just wanted to let you know. So this is something that you can keep, and especially if an issue comes up with a child and you know that they checked in at a lower number, that's a great conversation starter. Okay, another tip, have classroom procedures. If you've been a homeroom teacher, a substitute, any type of teacher in the classroom, you know how important procedures are. And it's extra important when you are a STEM teacher because you've got so many moving parts. You've got materials, you've got design builds, you've got journals, you're in a space that's not your own. So teach your kids on how to pass out folders, how to do this, how to do that, your everyday tasks, what they do when you walk in or when you leave. If you need a list, I will be making a video shortly about this, but I have a blog post that you can reference and I'll leave it down below to be able to check out what classroom procedures I taught when I was in the classroom. So here's a really important one. When I start the school year or anytime we come back from a long vacation, a long weekend, anytime there are issues in the classroom, I go over classroom scenarios. And these are specific to the STEM classroom. And these scenarios can be like you have a student, a peer in your group that has their head down and they're not helping you with what to do. What do you do in that situation? And this is a topic you bring up to your kids, and you are able to get a discussion going, and you're able to really talk about the best plan for that type of scenario, and you go through different scenarios. I do have a resource that you can purchase that has all the scenarios created for you, so all you do is print them out, laminate them, cut them, and have them ready for every class. They're small, so you just put them in a little Ziploc bag and take them with you in all your classes. But it's so important to be able to review these different scenarios because there's so many that can come up, and what better to kind of as a precautionary way to be able to address some of these things before they actually happen. And so such a great tip that I love to do, and that really helps a lot of the teachers that use it. So you can get that down below. If you do get it, let me know how it works out in your classroom. I'd love for you to tag me, message me on social media. You can find me at Love Learning STEM. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you. Connecting with families can be really important, but can also be one of the most difficult things when you are a STEM teacher. There are so many students and you cannot possibly reach out to all of them. And you want to be able to have access to them and their phone numbers. And so this is something that maybe you can ask your homeroom teacher to give to you, or you can ask the secretary to print out the different classroom rosters with the phone numbers attached, because you need to be able to communicate with a parent when a child is doing well, and also when there needs to be some extra communication. This isn't something that you want to heavily rely on the classroom teacher for, because you are essentially their STEM teacher, and you should be able to communicate to the parents when an issue arises or when something good happens. And I do highly suggest reaching out to the families when something good happens, when a child is extra compassionate. Maybe have a goal of making 2 phone calls a week, one where a child needs a reminder and one that needs just an extra praise report from the classroom to the parent. And if you see a child making progression in their behavior or their academics in STEM class, go ahead and call the parent, but you can set yourself a goal. It could be 1 phone call a week or 2 phone calls, or let's say once every 2 weeks, whatever you're comfortable with, and grow from there, because this will really help in your communication, because then you can mention to the classroom, I was able to talk to Rafael's parent the other day, and it was so nice being able to talk to them and let them know how amazing they've been doing in class, and I look forward to possibly calling your families and letting know how great you're doing. This is not like a warning, like if you don't do well, I'm gonna call your parents. Instead of phrasing it like that, like putting fear into the children, putting it in the way of like, hey, like I wanna be able to share good news with your families too, because I'm seeing such good things coming from you. And so that's, it's gonna go a long way. I highly recommend. Communicating with the homeroom teacher is also extremely important. This can also become arduous, especially from the homeroom teacher's side if you're not being extra careful about it. So every week, let's say you're going into a classroom every week, and let's say you have issues with the same kid every week. When you just tell the teacher every week there's an issue with this child or whatnot, and they feel like you're just coming with issues, you might need to maybe switch up your game plan a little bit and be able to let them know, hey, this is what I came across with this child, but here's what I did with it. So this is what you have the conversation with the child. This is when you give them a couple warnings and let them know, hey, the next warning I'm going to have to call your parents. And so being able to manage your classroom when it's your time in the classroom, and then letting the homeroom teacher know that you have dealt with the issue, but here, just in case, I want you to know that that's type of way. And one of the best things that the STEM group that I was a part of at a district, what we did was we had communication reports, and we left them with every teacher every day, every week. And so it would simply list out the objectives for the day, what standards we were teaching, and any praise reports, like kids that did well, or any issues that arose, or any extra notes. And so I'll show you what it looks like. I might be able to leave a free copy down below. Sign up with your email and you can get that right in your mailbox. But it's just a simple report you're able to put on their table and leave, because you might not have any time in between that class from the next class. And so it's a simple report you leave, and you can get out of there right away. So this is really key to like bridging that communication gap between you and the homeroom teacher, so they know what happened when you were in the classroom, but it doesn't take long. So when I was doing this, I would simply fill it out, like the standards and the objectives I would have ready for the week, because I knew what I was teaching. And then I would, as I was going in the class and I saw someone being compassionate, kind, respectful, I would write their name. Another way you know their names, that's a great tip. And I would also, if anything did arise, I didn't have an issue every time, every week, but if something came up, I would write down a quick note about what happened during class time, and I would leave it. So I wouldn't leave after class. It's something I did. So it would just be a natural, easy thing as I'm in class, and then I would leave. If you don't have a classroom management plan, a system, that is something that I recommend you looking at. I'm going to be making a video. Leave a comment down below if you're interested in watching what I did in the classroom, the STEM classroom, and what my system was. Have fun, do these things. Let me know which one worked well for you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.